Hello, everyone. I'm Ceylan Rowe, and I'm running for state rep here in the 12th Worcester District. I am here today with Patricia Hohl, who is the Executive Director of Voices Against Violence, and she happens to be a fellow commissioner. We met at the Metro West Commission on the Status of Women, and now she is one of the state commissioners. So welcome, Patricia.
Thank you, Ceylan. It's so wonderful to be here. I appreciate the invitation.
Thank you for your time. So before we begin, I just want to acknowledge that today is Denim Day, and we both have our denim on. Denim Day began in Italy in 1999 after a court overturned a rape conviction against a 45-year-old driving instructor because his 18-year-old student had been wearing tight jeans when she was assaulted. The next day, women in the Italian legislature wore denim jeans to protest. So in honor of that, I am wearing denim, and we're both wearing denim. So let's begin. Can you tell us about Voices? What programs do you have?
Yeah, Voices Against Violence has been around for over 40 years. We actually have 4 programs. We are a domestic violence service agency. We are a rape crisis center. We have an emergency shelter for victims of domestic violence or sexual assault who are fleeing imminent danger. And we have a supervised visitation program. So all 4 of those programs come under our roof, so to speak. And so we work with survivors one-on-one, individually. We do supportive counseling. We do advocacy. If somebody needs help in the court system, we help people maneuver the systems that can often be so difficult for survivors. And also, a big part is providing shelter to up to 6 families we provide shelter to who are fleeing danger.
And those are all really important work, and thank you for all that you do.
Yes, and I should just say that, so our catchment area, we represent 14 cities and towns in the Metro West area, mostly in Greater Framingham, Marlborough, but 14 cities and towns.
And that's important work. And my own personal journey in becoming an advocate started about 20 years ago when I heard that 1 out of 4 women in the United States would be, or in their lifetime will be, in an abusive relationship. And I was just floored. And I thought, how can this possibly be happening? Can you share today's statistics with us?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's the number we all talk about, right? 1 in 4, and it's a pretty shocking number. And domestic violence looks very different for different people. There's not just physical abuse, but there's emotional abuse, and there's elder abuse, and there's financial abuse. So it can happen in many different ways, and it's all about power and control. There's a lot of misinformation out there based on really old thinking around domestic violence, but it's really one person trying to control another's life in any way possible, whether that's through manipulation or through violence, often. So that's the number, 1 in 4. I can tell you a little bit about Voices and what we see. We pretty much see that number. We work with just about 3,000 people in our catchment area a year. Yeah. And we receive about 1,800 support line calls a year.
Wow.
So it's a lot of people. And sometimes people you don't even think it's happening to, because there's a lot of shame around it. There's a lot of shame around domestic violence, and there's a lot of blame, self-blame, right? Victims thinking that they're doing something wrong, thinking that it's all their fault, and if only they were a better wife or a better mother or a better cook or a better whatever, that they could make the violence stop. But it doesn't work that way.
No. And so there's a lot happening before COVID-19, and what do you see happening now? Have you got an increase in calls?
Yes, so our hotline is really crazy. Not surprisingly, we're seeing a lot of calls come in now in the middle of the night. We're a 24/7 hotline, and we used to maybe get a call, or probably 1 to 3 calls maybe in the middle of the night during the week, and now we're seeing a lot more that are coming in the middle of the night when people are alone or can make that phone call and not be overheard. So the hotline is really picked up. The number of new people we're seeing, like calling for the first time, has really dropped a little bit, but the number of services being requested by our current clients is off the charts, really off the charts. So we're working to make sure that we can fulfill all those needs. The police departments are reporting. We have an advocate at the Framingham Police Department. And the other police departments we hear from are reporting that the calls for domestic violence are going down. But my advocate at the police department tells me that the police reports that she's reading, the severity of the violence is way up from what she saw in, previous to the middle of March. And it sounds like good news when I say new client numbers are down and police reports are down. That's not good news at all. It's very bad news, actually, because we know that domestic violence increases during these times of economic stress. Historically, we see domestic violence increasing. So the fact that we're not hearing about it is really disturbing. The fact that victims are now sheltering in place or quarantined with their abuser 24/7, that they don't get a break when the abuser maybe used to go to work.
Yeah.
Very, very, very scary situations that people are living in right now.
Yeah, I actually know of somebody who had to leave the home because they were not in a healthy relationship at all, and they had to make that phone call in the middle of the night to another family member. What can somebody do if they are feeling unsafe, if they are in an abusive relationship? What can they do, Patricia?
So nobody understands their situation more than the victim, right? We put a lot of faith in that victim to know their situation and know what's safe and best for them, right? Victims really know what's a safe thing for them to do and what's not safe. And first and foremost, we want them to be safe. So if it's safe for people to make a phone call, I really urge people to try to pick up the phone and make that call. Because what we can do, we don't tell anyone what to do, right? We work under the empowerment model. We believe in empowering victims. They've lost all their control. They've lost their power. We believe in giving it to them. So we're not about to tell anybody what to do, but we can be that voice at the other end of the phone, maybe just to listen. We can be that voice at the other end of the phone that can help safety plan. Our advocates are really experienced advocates. They've been doing this for a very long time. They know how to see ways to help people keep themselves safe that maybe might not have occurred to the victims. So if they can make that phone call, that's really, really, really helpful. Or if they can ask somebody else to make that phone call for them, right? A trusted friend or a family member. We talk to anyone who calls. We talk to the family, we talk to the friends. It doesn't have to be the victim who calls us. I'm going to give you some resources at the end of our time, but another thing that we've put in place is a web chat. Because sometimes people can't make that phone call now that the abuser's there all the time. So being able to kind of type on a computer or on your phone is another way to get in touch with us where you wouldn't have to be speaking. So I would really strongly urge people to call our support line 24/7 or use the web chat. And this is what we're here to do, is help you in any way possible. And if you're ready to make that step, if you're ready to actually leave, we can help with that as well. So just call us. That's what we're here for.
That's terrific. And we will definitely put your phone number on the description so people will have it. And what signs can family members look for? We actually have a fellow commissioner who has been very open about the abuse that her sister had, Kim, and she ultimately was murdered 8 years ago. And so what signs can family members look out for?
Right. Really good question. And we have to think about it in terms of the different kinds of abuse that I was talking about, right? So oftentimes we think the signs are going to be physical. And so as long as we're not seeing any bruises or marks on someone, we think everything's probably okay. But that's not necessarily the case, because first of all, there might not be physical abuse, it might be emotional abuse. But also sometimes abusers are very clever in terms of they know how to abuse. This can get, I'm not going to get graphic, but I know this can be triggering to people. So if this is getting upsetting to people, I think they should feel free to turn me off. But oftentimes abusers know how to abuse and have the bruises be hidden. One of the most serious forms of abuse, which is strangulation, often doesn't leave any visible marks on the neck at all, because most of the damage that's done is internal. And strangulation is when I do trainings on strangulation, I call it practicing for a homicide, because that's a really, really dangerous warning sign if someone is being strangled, of a very high risk case. So some of the things to look for then is any kind of change of behavior, and I wrote down like not anything that's not normal. Well, we're not in normal times, and so it might be hard to tell what's normal and what's normal. So one of the things I really want to stress is trust your gut. If something is feeling off with someone, with a friend, with a daughter, with an acquaintance, trust your gut on this. If something is not feeling right, give Voices a call and talk it out with us. And we're happy to help, and we're happy to help in different ways to approach people where it might not feel comfortable. But being silent is not something you want to do right now if you're feeling that something is off. So maybe the person is depressed, or more depressed than usual, or maybe the person is a little more reserved where she used to be more outgoing and bubbly. And I also have to say here, I use pronouns. I usually use she around victims and he around abusers, because that's typically the situation, but I do want to acknowledge that that's not always the situation, but I do use those pronouns. Maybe they're drinking more, maybe they're having changes in sleep, or using drugs more where they didn't before, or any kind of those behavioral changes. Trust your gut and speak up and check in, ask somebody. Another sign you can look for is if they cancel appointments quite suddenly. If you were going to meet up on some sort of video chat and then they cancel all the time at the last minute. Canceling at the last minute can be a sign of somebody's controlling how they're moving about, right? And I use moving in quotes now that we're in this weird time. Another thing to look at is the person has no access to money or access to a car. This can be another way to control victims. If the person is excessively private about their relationship and they don't talk a lot about it, that can sometimes be a warning sign. Again, for some people that might be totally natural, but for some people it's a warning sign. Or you can watch how they talk about the relationship. So if they say things like, oh, he gets so moody, or sometimes I really push his buttons, or he's got a bad temper, or a bad temper when he drinks, or jealousy. Talking about jealousy, like he gets so jealous. Another real red flag to watch for. Now, everything I just said, sometimes those can be very normal in a relationship, but sometimes they're not, and they're usually the behaviors that are kind of at the extreme. And as I said before, domestic violence is never about pushing buttons. It's never about getting someone angry. It's about power and control. This is a very old stereotype around domestic violence, and it's just not true. Where she pushes his buttons. It's just not true. And another thing to look for is isolation. If somebody is really isolating, whether that's self-isolation, whether they're isolating themselves from their friends and families, or whether the abuser is isolating them, that's often not a good thing. If they drop out of activities, like I said, either canceling at the last minute or even dropping out of activities that normally they really like doing, that can be a warning sign. Or having to get permission to go anywhere or to speak to someone, or I'm going to have to get permission. No, again, sometimes somebody can say, oh, you know, I'd love to go to that with you. I'm going to have to check in with my husband to make sure we don't have any. That's not what I'm talking about, right?
Mhm.
I'm talking about somebody who literally has to get permission in order to go out and see friends or even go to the store. That happens. And so that was all very victim centered. Just a few things you can look for on the abuser side is if this is a person who does just appear to you to be overly controlling, right? Or critical in front of others, you know, criticizing the victim in front of others constantly, you know, you're such a crappy mother, you never do anything right. Um, Someone who controls all the money. And again, money issues can be weird between couples, you know, everybody has their own way of handling money. You know, sometimes if it's you know, the man who is the only one working and might give his wife an allowance, and that can be very normal in the family, and sometimes it can be very not normal. So understanding what's normal around money, but controlling money, and acting strangely around money, stealing from bank accounts. You know, if someone were to say to you like, wow, he wiped out a few $100s from our savings account, that's not a good sign. And then blaming, if he blames her for lots of things, and that's kind of around being same as being critical, but you know, it's always her fault for no matter what happens, right? Kids are home now, school's canceled, likely that's her fault, right? So those are just a few things to look at on the abuser side. And again, trust your gut. Some of this behavior can be, I hate to use the word normal, but you know, some of this behavior can be evident without it being abusive, but those are just some things to watch for. And if you're not feeling good about it, if something's really worrying you, talk to them. And if you don't feel comfortable doing that, talk to us, and we can help get you some language around how to bring this up.
You had mentioned money, and in the fall, I did a presentation about this, and I was shocked to find out that um, domestic violence actually it accounts for $6 billion in loss in our economy, in the U.S. economy, because we are not addressing this problem. So victims actually can't get to work, or they don't feel safe to go to work, or they're in the hospital and they can't get to work. And so this is you know, obviously a human issue, but this is also a financial issue, and it really is something that I wish businesses and we as a community would really start addressing it. You obviously have been doing this for so long, and it's frustrating to me, and I'm sure to you, is that it's like, how is this still happening? So
Yeah.
yeah, what can the community do? How can we help Voices Against Violence? I know a few years ago, or there's the annual walk that you host in September, and this is where I got my hat. And I just want you to know that I carry this hat anytime I travel. So this hat has been all over the world, my Voices Against Violence hat. But what can we do to support you in the work that you do?
Sure. So a couple things. First and foremost is please get the word out. We are just working really hard to get the word out that Voices is operating, that we are here. We're here 24/7. We have a 24/7 hotline. We call it a support line. We have the web chat now, and we really, I'll give you that, you know, before we go, I'll give you that information on how to get us. So, you know, please post this up, put it on your social media, get it out. If you belong to groups, you know, I'm in Framingham, and I know a lot of the Framingham neighborhoods have, you know, social emailing groups and social media groups. And if you're in one of those, we just need to get this word out, because I'm afraid people think that we're not here, but we are. And then the other thing I'll say is, and this feels a little crass to talk about our Purple Passion when we're talking about such a serious subject, but this is Purple Passion is the only fundraiser that we do. It's always been a 5K run and a 3K walk. And as the only fundraiser, you know, this is money that we count on in normal times. But we're not anticipating a good year financially next year. And so we need to make this walk. You know, it's been growing for the last few years, and we really, really rely on it. And I'm very nervous about looking at our next fiscal year, which starts in July, in terms of our fundraising abilities. So we've made the decision to make Purple Passion a virtual event. It's going to be on September 19th as it normally would have been, but people are going to be able to kind of go do their own 5K run or 3K walk and be able to post it up, and we're going to be doing fundraising and registration and sponsorships and all that. So if you can possibly register, if you can possibly fundraise for this, that would really help us, because we're still going to have to pay the advocates and pay the rent at the shelter and buy the food for our clients. It's a lot, you know. It's an expensive agency to run, but it's an important and vital agency. So if anybody can help in that, that would be great. I'll also give you, Ceylan, some of our, you know, we are on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. The people who do our social media are incredibly talented. It's informative, it's beautiful. You could leave us a message on any of those platforms if you want to get on our email list and find out more about, you know, what's happening with the walk, and certainly we'll have it all over social media, probably starting in June. But that's, you know, like a lot of agencies, that's where we need the help. We're dreading the next fiscal year, but we'll get through it.
Absolutely. And I would love to sign up for the walk. I've done it in the past few years. As a commission, we went and enjoyed ourselves on the walk, and I brought my mother last year. So absolutely, I will sign up for the virtual walk this year and bring some
Thank
friends and
you.
mom again.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you're amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to try to make it fun. You know, we're going
Absolutely.
to have some speakers in the morning, you know, where people can tune in and kind of hear from some speakers, and make it fun and interesting, and maybe even have a few virtual events leading up to it. We always used to have this great event at a restaurant, and it used to be so much fun, and they made us a Purple Passion cocktail, and it was a blast. But you know, we won't be able to do that this year. So the committee who's working on this is like, well, maybe we can do some virtual events. So we're thinking about that as well. So please stay tuned. We're trying to keep it fun and keep it light, and also, you know, raise the funds that we need to raise to keep going and serve all the people we serve.
Patricia, thank you so much. Thank you for all your work that you do. Thank you so much for taking the time today to speak with me. I wish you, as always, the best and for voices. And we're going to post all the links for people to access you guys. So thank you so much.
Ceylan, thank you. You know, I'm a fan. So I really appreciate the time, and best of luck to you.
Thank you.